Hello out there. Welcome to the What You Need to Know in Windows 10 STR session. My name is Nigel Jordan. I'm a system administrator on the device management team. We're just going to be walking through some pretty simple stuff in Windows 10. It really kind of centers around troubleshooting, kind of some setup information, things that have changed just a little bit from what you might be used to in Windows 7. But it's all just, it's relevant Windows 10 information. This actually should go pretty quickly. I'm going to have you guys save your questions to the end, unless they're really relevant to the specific section that we're in. So I'll give a brief pause for each section. But if you have some general Windows 10 questions, we'll have some time at the end to kind of cover some of that stuff. But yeah, that's the gist of it. It should go pretty quickly, and most of it's pretty simple, easy to learn information. So Sam Garza is with me here today. He's going to be going through the chat stuff. So with those questions that you type in there, he'll relay those to me, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. Additionally, the information that he provided you via email, that's directly what we're going to be covering today. So if you have that document, feel free to follow along with that, and we'll get started here then. So the first thing in our document it covers wireless networks and how to configure them. Honestly, the configuration is the exact same as it was in Windows 7. It's just a little bit different ways to get there. So the first thing that you'll notice is that your wireless menu down here, if it'll pull itself up, looks a little bit different than it used to. Obviously, it's got kind of the Windows 10 look and feel with the new settings windows and all of that stuff. But to configure new networks, it works a little bit differently as well. So what we'll do here is we're actually going to, I just realized that I've got both of these networks configured on my machine. That's my fault. I'm going to try to take one of these out. Let's see here, manage no networks. And this is actually in your documentation as well, so we'll cover that in just a moment. So to configure a new network, the quickest way to get there is to right click on your wireless icon down there and go to the Network and Sharing Center. Once this is open, we have an option in here to set up new networks. So we're going to choose that. Then we're going to obviously be doing a wireless network, so we have the option here to manually connect to a wireless network. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the configuration stuff here. First of all, because it's all in your documentation, and second, because it really hasn't changed at all. So DPS Arrow 2 is the one we're going to configure. It's enterprise, same two checkboxes here. Click next. Tells you that it's added, and of course we want to go through and change those connection settings because there are a few other pieces in there we need to fix. This first tab, the defaults, we just set these, so it looks good. The security settings, the big one, and a lot of STRs out there are having trouble right now with their credentials being embedded in wireless and it kicking them offline with the new password policy. 9 times out of 10, if it's a wireless issue on a laptop somewhere, it's because this guy's gotten checked at some point along the line. Unchecking this makes sure that no matter what, whenever somebody wants to connect to the wireless, they have to enter credentials. If this stays checked and I'm logged into a machine and I log out, it leaves me logged in on the wireless network, so the next person that logs in is actually still using my wireless credentials. So obviously, if my credentials change at any point, that can cause a problem, and I think there are a number of you out there that are seeing that right now. Our wireless scripts on the NAS will fix this problem. If you just run the script, it'll replace the profile and it should fix it. But look for that setting. That's a big one that gets missed. So then next I pop into settings here. We get rid of the verification of the server identity with a certificate. And then of course, we always want to double check to make sure this is checked. On undomained computers, this won't be checked. On domained computers, it will be checked. And this really just passes the credentials you log into your computer with to the wireless network, so it can authenticate you with those same credentials. So we say OK on that. We say OK, the rest of the defaults in there are fine. In the advanced settings here, we want to check both of these boxes. We'll leave the top section to be user and computer authentication like it is, but the bottom section we switch. If you'll remember, a couple of years ago we had some trouble with credentials not passing properly, and that's because of this radio button here. So we're actually going to put that on the bottom one to perform the single sign-on after user logon. Some people like to put this at 15 seconds. I've found that 10 is fine. Whatever you've been taught is probably right. So pick one, choose it, and we'll go with that. But that's really it for the configuration for DPS Arrow 2. Again, you may not, if you're at home and you need to connect to networks, you don't have to go through all of this stuff. I'll actually show you that in just a second. It's not really in your documentation, but it's worth noting. DPS Arrow 2 is now added. If I were trying to connect to just some network, some normal network at home or elsewhere, all you really have to do is click on this and then click on the network here. You can see this is just a standard secured network. CenturyLink, I don't know what that is. We'll try this one. See if it'll give me the prompt for username and password. Normally when you try to connect to these guys, they'll ask you for a network key. This one looks like it's an older style. Usually it should be a username and password, but it really just depends on what their authentication is set up as. But that's all you have to do to connect to any other network outside of DPS Arrow 2 and DPS Student. It's probably going to kick me off here for a second and then reconnect me, I hope. But
And we do have a question from Jeremy Collins. It says, on Windows 7.
Let's see here. Jeremy Collins, I do have a question about networking in Windows 7. There used to be an option to say when Ethernet is plugged in to disconnect wireless, seems to be gone and wireless stays on. So that was actually more of a Dell thing than anything else. That specific flag is actually set by that flag is actually set by the wireless card itself, and so the wireless cards that we're shipping with our Dell laptops, they actually had that in their driver pack to allow us to disconnect automatically. Windows actually does a pretty good job of this now, and will disconnect you. So like in Windows 10, if you get a Dell laptop and you have Windows 10 and you plug a wire into it, most of the time it automatically disables that wireless card for you. So you don't really have to worry too much about that anymore. Let me get back on DPS Student here. Sorry about the connection loss here. I probably shouldn't have actually been changing the settings in there. It's my fault. There we go. All right, so we're remoted back in here. So I hope that answers your question. Like I said, it was mainly set up for the drivers. Windows 10 does a pretty good job of detecting that and disabling it automatically for you. So that is the basic stuff for configuring the wireless. As you can see, the settings really haven't changed at all. It's just how you get there has changed a little bit. So the next thing that we cover is, how do I change the settings on a network? I showed you that thing earlier where that checkbox is. Well, how do I look to see if that checkbox is actually checked or not? And if I go in there, how would I fix that? So the method is pretty similar. You always start by right-clicking on this and going to your network and sharing center. By the way, there's a lot of ways to get here. You can just click on your start button and start typing network and sharing center, and it'll come up in here. The control panel is still around, so you can get to it through the control panel. There's a lot of ways to get to this spot. But once you're in here, in order to check the settings for your wireless network, you can see that we're connected to DPS Student up here right now. So all I do is I click on the DPS Student link, and then I click the wireless properties here. Now the reason that I have to do it this way, you can see that we're right in here in the settings. Oh, look at that one. The credentials are wrong on that. That's not how it's supposed to be. I'm not going to change the settings, so I'm not going to lose my connection again. But you'll notice the reason that we have to do it this way is because over here on the left, we used to in Windows 7 have an option over here to manage our wireless networks. And it took you to this great screen that showed all the wireless networks you had configured on your computer, and that entire panel is gone now. They removed it in Windows 10. It's unfortunate and it sucks, and a lot of people want it back, but I don't think it's coming back anytime soon. So this is the way that you can modify an existing connection. The other way that you could modify an existing connection, and this actually dovetails nicely into what our next section here is you could forget the network and then just remake it. So in order to forget a network, you actually just left click on your wireless icon down here, and we're going to go into network settings. Now this screen is the new settings that slowly is replacing all of the items that are in control panel. Control panel is still around, and I don't expect it to go anywhere anytime soon, but eventually once settings becomes robust enough, they'll probably do away with control panel. So get used to using this. There are a few things in here right now that you should know how to do. And this is the first one, is coming in here and managing your wireless networks. You can see Wi-Fi is turned on right here. You can see we're connected to DPS student. You can click on show available networks here, and it'll just bring this thing up to show you what all you have available to you. But the item that we're going to go look in here is manage known networks. And you can see that this is a list of all of the networks that this laptop is connected to. And forgetting networks is really, really easy. This is from a few years ago, so I'll blow it away. This Spanish head down here, you click on that and you can click forget, and that network's gone. This one is Portland International Airport. That one's gone. So all of this stuff, you can just take all of these things out of here, and these networks will just go away. And then of course you could go back and reconfigure the network from scratch like we showed you in the first step. I'm pretty sure that's it for wireless. So we've got one more thing in here for wireless, and then we'll pause and take some wireless questions. So the last thing on our list here is what's a quick way to get my IP address, my MAC address, other network information like that. Sometimes you're troubleshooting or working with the network team and they have questions that need answering about that. It's a lot easier than it used to be. You literally just click on this thing again, your wireless icon, you go back into your network settings in here, and then from there all you have to do is click on the network that you're connected to. So we're on DPS student here. You click on that network and it gives you a ton of information about your network here. You know, what protocol it's using at the time. It's funny that I'm on AN, that's kind of weird, but WPA2 Enterprise, what band you're on, what the exact channel is, your IP address. This one's super important for the network team here, your MAC address. So some pretty good information right here. I especially like that it gives us the driver version. It's a good way of finding out whether or not you have up-to-date drivers for some of those older driver situations that we had. Probably won't be as big a problem in Windows 10 because the drivers are pretty current for them, but all this information is really good stuff and it's really easy to get to.
It's Brian Barrett from
Okay.
Hey, Brian.
So yeah, that's pretty much it for the wireless information. We'll pause for a second to take any wireless questions that you guys might have, and then we'll keep moving.
So no questions in so far. Well, no new questions.
No new questions so far. Okay. All right. So the next section that we have in here is really kind of covering the task manager, the new task manager. How do I view running tasks, programs that are run when Windows starts? The old task manager in Windows 7 really didn't give you much information. It gave you enough information to see what running tasks there were, gave you some processor information, you know, which programs were using the most memory and things like that. And so the new task manager does the same thing. The major difference here is that there's even more things that it can do. So the easiest way that I usually get there, it's shortcut key. You can do Control, Shift, and Escape, and it'll just take you right to your task manager. Now I'm not going to do the Control Alt Delete on here because I don't know what it's going to do to the video feed, but you can do Control Alt Delete and it'll pull up just a flat screen that has a few options, just like Windows 7. It looks a little different, but one of the options in there is also Task Manager. It'll take you to the same place. I'll show you another way to get there in just a little bit when we cover one of the other items on the list here. But you can already see that the Task Manager looks a little bit different. The first time you open it, you might actually get this view here. There are running apps. Come on, show me what they are. I'm not sure why it's not showing them to me, but you'll get a smaller view that'll show you fewer, like less information. It literally just gives you a list of the applications. But if you click on that, button that says More Details down here, and it expands the entire thing. And it gives you, more detailed info. You can see that, overall my computer is using a little over half of the memory that it has available. my disk really isn't doing much right now. My processor's, kind of idling. It's kicking around. But you can still sort these by name. You can still sort them by, which applications are using the most memory at the time, which ones are doing the most disk access. So you still have all those options available. You also have another option available. Each of the so you've got it separated into applications that are currently running and then applications that are running in the background. So you can see that the Adobe Update Service, Cortana, the new Siri-like thing that Windows has, these are all just kind of running in the background. But within these, you can expand these out to see the individual, services and other pieces of the applications that are running along with those. Some of these end up having a lot. I don't really have any of those right away here. It looks like most of them only have one underneath it. But some of them will have multiple sub-processes spawned from those processes. So Google Chrome is actually a big one in this. Chrome will have one overall process, and then every single tab spawns its own sub-process, so you can kill those individually. We'll kind of just walk through the tabs here. It's not really the order that the documentation is in. So the next tab here is just some more detailed information in a very nice, pretty graph format for what's going on the machine itself. You have your computer, your CPU utilization here, your memory, your disk, your Wi-Fi, all that good stuff. There's, this is really cool to look at. It's a good place to start if you're trying to see kind of, what's going on the machine. But it doesn't really give you much specific information. We'll hop into that, how to get a little more specific information in a moment. Your app history here, what it does is it'll track the applications that use the most computer time or network traffic. If we sort by those, you can see that I've used a lot of Edge on here. Cortana's always running in the background apparently, so it's sitting there waiting. Link, photos, et cetera, down the line. Network traffic looks pretty similar. Edge, obviously, it's transferred 300 megabytes of data. So just another tool to kind of see what's doing what on your machine. The next big one that a lot of people are curious about is this startup icon, and this has been a pretty awesome addition. Specifically because you can really quickly get a list of the things that are loading when Windows boots. And so when Windows starts up, by default, all of these would have been enabled. You can see that I've already done a little bit of customization in here and disabled certain things from starting up. But in addition to whether or not they're enabled or disabled, this fourth column over here actually tells you, wow, this is a quick look at how long these applications are taking to load. So if you've got one like this, this Send Note tool or OneNote Send to OneNote tool down here, it has low startup impact. Probably takes a couple seconds to load, and it's saying, yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it. But you can see that both Snagit and OneDrive here, they take quite a while to load up. The impact to how quickly my system starts is pretty high based on this. So I may want to disable one or more of these. To do that, it's pretty simple. I'll take this guy out of here. You literally just right-click on it and you choose Disable, or you can go down to the bottom corner here while it's highlighted and click the Disable button. If I disable it, you'll see that now that it's disabled, this button turns back into Enable, so I can turn it back on just as easily. The last few tabs here you probably won't use as frequently. The Users tab gives you a breakdown of the applications that are being used on the computer by user. Right now you can see that I'm the only user logged into this machine, so it doesn't really matter much. But if there were multiple users here, it's more relevant on multi-use machines, especially ones that people remote into or leave accounts logged into. It's good for a quick glance. Maybe you can see, oh, look, there's other users in here. We could kick them off or whatever. And you can see that I've got a button to disconnect myself over here. So I could log other computers out or other users out so long as I have admin rights on that machine. Details gives a little bit more detailed information about the current running processes. So you can see that there's a lot of similarities between this tab and the other one. This one gives you like an overview of what the application is actually doing. This one, however, gives you more information about the application itself. Here's the processor ID if you were using scripts or something to kill a process by its ID. Over here is a description of what Windows believes based on how it's registered, what the application is. You can right click on these and get even more information. You can open the file location of where that file exists. You can search online for more information about that running process. So there's a lot of different things you can do in here that I won't dive into. But if you're ever trying to troubleshoot, they've made things a lot easier in Windows 10. And then the last tab here, it's going a little bit slow. The last tab here is a list of your services. You can get to this same place, or you can get to essentially the same screen by just going to your regular services built-in Windows application. That's still there. It's probably the more powerful tool, but this is a really quick way of just being like, man, what services are running? Is there something that I can kill? Is there a service that's hung that I need to restart? So it's another useful troubleshooting tool. And again, that's kind of just all in this task manager as they've tried to improve how you use it and what you use it for. The last thing I'll actually go back to this performance tab. There's a link down here called Open Resource Monitor. And remember how I was saying that this really doesn't give you much information, it's just kind of pretty. Well, this one is both pretty and it gives you a ton of information. So you can see pretty quickly here that not only is it going to give me my computer utilization over here on the right hand side, but it's also going to show me every single running process, what its processor ID is, what state it's in, how many threads it currently has open. This is like really in-depth troubleshooting. The likelihood that most of us need to go in here to do any troubleshooting using this is slim, but we have used it in the past for a variety of situations. We had to use this for the black screen issue that we had last year, where computers were just hanging when they would boot. This stuff was really useful in our troubleshooting in that. So that's a quick overview of the task manager. Does anybody have any questions about that before we dive into our next section?
Nothing on the chat.
Okay. All right, if you think of other questions about that come up later, just let us know at the end. So our next section is talking about default applications, because this has changed a little bit too. You may have noticed at some point, those of you that are using Windows 10, if you open Google Chrome and it's like, hey, do you want to make Google Chrome your default browser? You're like, yeah, I love Chrome. And you click yes, it's like, can't do that. You're going to have to go do that yourself. There's a new spot for that. Windows has tried to kind of beef up programs just stealing that default application status by itself. Applications still can, but browsers are better about respecting that, I guess, or maybe they just have them blocked a little bit harder. But there is a whole brand new place to go and set those default applications. I'll show you the Windows correct way of getting there. And that's to click on your start button and then you go into your settings. And remember, all of this stuff you can do. My favorite way to get to anything, I don't really use menus anymore. My favorite way to get to anything is click on your start button and start typing. If I wanted to go to default applications, I would type default and there it is. It's the same link. But if you were in settings already and you were going to browse there, you go to your system icon, and then there's an icon on the left that says default apps. So let's talk about this a little bit, because there are a few different pieces in here. So you have like your basic default apps here. And these, the group that's shown here are kind of the most commonly used. Email, Maps, I don't know why Maps is there, maybe that's not that common, maybe on a tablet. But your music player, your photo viewer, your video player, your browser. To change the settings on that, it's pretty easy. So if I click web browser, Windows knows which web browsers I have installed on my machine. It's like, oh, okay, I see that you have Firefox there. If I choose Firefox, before you switch, oh yeah, they like to tell you how good Edge is. I'm going to switch anyway. But you can see now my web browser is Firefox. That's my default app. The next time I launch, any sort of HTML page, it's going to open in Firefox. I actually prefer Edge on this machine because this is the Surface over here. But it does cry about you moving away from Edge, and it gives you reasons. If you're ever running Firefox, it occasionally pops up a thing and says, hey, Firefox wastes like the most battery out of all of the browsers, and you're like, yeah, I knew that, but I'm going to use it anyway. So So that's how you change them for the basic ones here. You also have the option to hit the reset button, sets everything back how Microsoft sent it to you. Pretty straightforward. But you have a few different other options down here to get more specific with the applications that you're setting for your defaults. So let's run through those. The first is choosing default apps by file type. So this is the long way of doing it. You'll look at it. I honestly like the other menu better, and it is still there. You can get to it through the control panel. This piece is. But you can see that like it's literally showing you every file extension that it's determined on your computer, and you get to scroll through all of it and decide what app you want to open with those specific applications. I'm not a big fan of doing it this way. I mean, sure, I could try to scroll down, and in the documentation you see that I picked on the PDF file a little bit. But if we went up to like DocX here, obviously all of the doc files are going to load in Word. If I had some other application I wanted to load those in instead, I don't know what that would be. I would just click on this, and I would choose the application I want instead. I'm not going to change that because that'll make my world awful. But so this is the long way of doing things. Personally, you can see a few of these don't have a default. It's like, hey, we found something with a .dos extension. How would you like to open that? And then you could choose a default application from there. The ways that I find a little more useful than using that screen we'll walk through here. So we have the choose default apps by protocol is kind of the same thing. Don't ever use this. It's kind of a pain. I'm not even going to go through it. It's more detailed information about how the application launches rather than what the application is. So don't do that one. But the bottom one, setting defaults by apps, this one is actually pretty useful. And you can see that it loads in the old school style here. This existed in Windows 7, but I don't know if it existed in the older Service Pack versions of Windows 7. So this takes a little bit of time to load, because what it's doing right now is it's trying to determine what are the various applications that I have installed on this computer that could be set as default applications for the various file types I have on my computer. So it's querying these saying, hey, what do you support? So if I click on Adobe Acrobat Pro here, you have a couple of different options. If I click this first one that says set this program as default, this is going to say, hey, Acrobat 11 Pro, what are the applications that you can handle? Like what can you support? And I'm going to make you the default application for all of those. It's useful for very quickly getting those defaults set up or fixing them when they're broken. You know, maybe you just installed VLC Media Player here, and it took the default app from all this stuff, and that's great. That's why you wanted VLC. But man, I really wanted MPEGs to still load in Windows Media Player or something. Then you can go down to this choose defaults for this program, and you can actually get more detailed on which extensions that application is going to use. That might take a second to load as well. If it doesn't load or it takes too long, I'll just skip it. But the idea is that based on the application, you can choose individual file types that it supports, or choose not to support. So you can see that right now VLC supports all of this stuff, but for example, AVI is still loading with my default Windows Movies and TV app. I don't know why. I don't really use this computer for movies and stuff, but so this is a way to really itemize the things that you do and don't want loading in any given application. That's pretty much it for the default application stuff. I'm going to exit back out of here and pause for a second for questions on it. It should be pretty straightforward, but if you do have them, please ask.
No questions, just a comment. The biggest issue I have seen with Edge is the default for PDFs. It's a pain.
The default for PDFs kind of sucks. It doesn't have very many options. It's really good at displaying non-complex PDFs, but as soon as you start getting into some of the more advanced features, or searching with them in them, or filling in form fields, then you start to see a lot of ugly things, because it's really meant to just say, hey, here's a PDF and here's the contents of it. It's really not meant to be a full-fledged PDF manipulation program. So I agree with you. I use Edge mainly just for really quick browsing and other stuff, but yeah, I agree. It doesn't sound like there are any other questions, so we are going to move on to the next section. So that was default applications. What you need to know about applications in general in Windows 10, though, there's a new platform of applications called the Universal Windows Platform, the UWP for short. The UWP applications, in fact, I can kind of show, I'm in the wrong screen there. Windows Store, here we go. UWP applications are all of these things that show up here. So the Windows Store has individual applications that install just to Windows. The idea behind UWP is that I can write an application, I can publish it to the Windows Store, and it'll run in Windows 10, it'll run on Windows Phone, and it'll run on tablets, it'll run on your Xbox One. UWP is kind of the unification of all of the Windows platforms. That's the intention behind it anyway. For the most part, it works really well. You know, Facebook has an application down here, and this Facebook application is the exact same one that you load on your Xbox. Minecraft, a little bit different. Developers have the option to exclude specific platforms, but you get the picture. So that's the cool thing about UWP. The ugly truth about UWP is they're a little bit of a pain in the butt to uninstall. So we still have, like I said before, we still have our control panel here. And in our control panel, we still have our programs and features. So this is the good old uninstall back in the Windows XP days, add remove programs. This thing is still here. And it still works well, but it has a glaring omission, and that omission is all of those UWP apps. You won't see them in this list. So I'm just going to show you really quickly how to get rid of that stuff. As you may have guessed, it's in that same settings area. So we're going to click on our start button and go to settings. You can also hit your start button and type remove, and in a second, add or remove programs. You see that it gets the gear icon, which means that it's in our settings box. So we'll go here the long way though. So you go to settings, you go to system, and then you go to apps and features over here on the left. So apps and features, take a second to load here. You can see that apps and features has all of these things installed. It looks like an expanded, larger version of your other add remove programs out there. But you can see that there are a few of these apps that weren't over there. Chess for All, for example, is a UWP app. Cut the Rope, one of my favorite games, that is a UWP app. That is not something you will see in add remove programs because it's a UWP app. So you have the option to uninstall it from here. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm not going to go any further into this. I will uninstall that because, no, not right now. We'll wait. But Get Office comes by default. We don't use it in the district because we don't need it in the district. We already have Office. So if there are applications that you need to get rid of that you're not able to for your regular remove programs window, this is probably where they're hiding. They're probably UWP apps. For the UWP apps that you just want to get rid of from here, though, all you really have to do is just unpin them. If you just don't want to see it anymore, you're like, I don't really use movies and TV. You know what? I'll get rid of Groove Music. You can just unpin that. It doesn't uninstall the app, so it is still taking up a little bit of space on this computer. If I go up and look, Groove Music is right there. So it's taking up 29 meg. If I really wanted to get rid of it, I could. That's UWP stuff in a nutshell. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to move to the next part because if there's questions on that, we can get those at the end because we're pretty close to the end. So the next section is how do I access the Action Center? So there might be some of you that are asking, well, what is the Action Center? So the Action Center on the very bottom right-hand corner, anybody that has a phone knows what notifications are. The Action Center is really just kind of notifications for your Windows machine. You can see down here, there's notifications. Look, I've got a network firewall security notification here. The Feedback Hub wants to know how satisfied I am with the touchpad on my Surface over here. Here's a tip: Firefox is draining your battery faster. So this stuff, I mean, it can get cluttered up with some of the things in here. There are some options to turn on what things can and can't notify you. I go in here probably once a day and just clear everything out of here. But other things that appear here, if you configure mail on here, you'll get notifications about your mail here. a bunch of other stuff will show up here. Like I said, just think of your cell phone. Anything that appears there is probably going to appear in the Action Center as well. The other cool thing about it, though, is that it gives you some options to really quickly get to some important things in here. We have our settings button in here again, which we already have somewhere else. But you can turn on quiet hours, which will disable notifications for you. If I had the option on this monitor that I'm remoted from to adjust the brightness settings, they're here. I can turn on and off airplane mode, Bluetooth. I can connect to different things. My network stuff is in here. So there are a lot of options, and you can actually add more options to this there's a settings for the Action Center, and you can get rid of some of these buttons and add different buttons. But that's it. That's the Action Center. The two ways to get there are to click this little guy on the bottom right, or if you have a touch screen, you kind of swipe in from the right side, and it'll pop open that Action Center. And there's just a bunch of stuff in there that's somewhat useful. The last section that we have in our documentation kind of is along that same note as the Action Center. And the question is, what other useful tools should I know about in Windows 10? And there really aren't any, because Windows 10 and Windows 7 are pretty much the same in most ways. But the most useful thing that they've added to Windows 10 is this right here. We get it on the hotline, when we're answering phones and people are calling in, and people are like, we need their computer name to remote in. You have to click on Start, and then you get them to right-click on their computer if that's there, and then they click on Properties, and then they scroll down through the window. If you need to get them to the Device Manager, it's just as tricky. But now they've given you this option to just right-click on your Start button, and immediately you get all sorts of really cool things that you can get to here. Your Programs and Features is where you remove stuff. If you'll remember, you can get to your power options. You can go to your Event Viewer, which is, as I mentioned before, another way to get to that. System is the one that actually pops up that window that shows you the computer name. You have your Device Manager, you have Disk Management, you have Command Prompt, both normal and admin. Tons and tons of stuff. Control Panel, File Explorer, you have your Run box right from here. So a lot of those things that were in your old Start menu that aren't here anymore, plus a bunch of new things that you went to a lot, but now you've got a faster way of getting to them. They're probably in here somewhere. Sign in and shutdowns if you don't want to use this part. Desktop, I believe, actually pulls up. I thought that pulled up a thing, an Explorer window with your desktop on it, but maybe not. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff over there. Really, as far as tools, that's the biggest and best thing that I think they've added. But other than that, really, that's what you guys need to know for Windows 10 and how to kind of support it and where things have moved. But if you have any questions about this or any questions about Windows 10 in general, either how to do certain things in it or how we're implementing it in DPS or when we're implementing it in DPS, go ahead and ask those now. We've got some time.
Okay, so there's a question. If we uninstall UWP app, does it delete it for all users or just for the user logged in?
That's a good question. I actually don't know if I know that. Hold on a second here. Let me think. I believe, you know what? I think it depends on who installed it. So if it's a UWP, so for example, when I image a machine, I go through and get rid of a bunch of stuff. I get rid of like the built-in news app. I get rid of just some stuff that we don't need in our image. And from there, those apps are no longer installed for any of the users on the machine. But they're also the apps that came with Windows, right? So if another user logs into the computer and they install their own app, I don't think that it actually installs that application on my profile. So if I go and I download, I don't know, Bejeweled or something, if somebody else logs into that computer, I don't think they have Bejeweled because it's attached to my profile. I will have to check on that because I don't know 100% certain if that's true. I may be just lying to you right now, but I'll check on that. If you mark down who asked that question, I'll make sure that I get that out there, or I'll just email all of you with that answer.
Okay. Warren asked, Edge does not support Java, right? So we have to install Internet Explorer.
Okay.
And just asking for GHR access.
No, that's a great question. In fact, that's something that now that you mentioned, I might add that to the official documentation here. So Edge is the default browser, but in our image and in Windows 10 in general, Internet Explorer 11 is still available. It's just not sitting there because they don't want you using it. They want it for Edge. So let's go a little bit into the background of that. You're correct. Edge does not allow Java. Edge is actually very much like Google in that they support certain things like Flash Player and some other stuff, but they support it in a way that it's built into the browser. So you can, well, I should take that back. I think Google actually ended their Flash support too, so never mind that. Google is not allowing any plugins in their browser. That's the core of it. Chrome will no longer have any plugins that they aren't actively developing for their browser, minus extensions and that sort of thing. Edge is kind of the same way. There is no Java plugin for Edge, but they, like I said, they do still support Flash because they maintain Flash updates for the Edge browser. May not go on forever, but that's that. So Internet Explorer, though, like I said, is still installed on the machine. So there's a couple of ways to get to it. You're probably not going to find it in this list. I don't think, yeah, by default, it's not going to show up in this list. But if I click on my Start button and I start typing Internet Explorer, you'll see that it is still there. It's IE 11. It's still receiving security updates. It still works. And if you install the Java plugin, it will still install to the Internet Explorer browser. So yeah, that is still around, specifically for GHR. You can still use it. The other way that you can find it, obviously, is you could actually go browse deep into the the structure of program files and find it, and then create a shortcut for it. But honestly, your easiest way is just to start typing Internet Explorer, and it'll pop up. It's usually the first option. If you've never launched it before, it might be down an option or two. You can see number 2. They're like, oh, why don't you use Edge? But yeah, that's how you find it, and it's still on the machine. If for some reason it's not, let's see, programs and features. I knew you were going to move. So this is the same way that you would install and uninstall Internet Explorer in the past. You go into the old school programs and features, and then you go to turn Windows features on and off. I'm not going to hit this button because it takes a really long time to load, because there's a lot of Windows features that you can enable and disable. But once you're in here, you get a whole, well, I'll click it, whatever. We'll see how long it takes. There's a whole list of features that you can turn on and off, and one of them is Internet Explorer. Oh, that didn't take that long. You can see that it's checked here. If I uncheck it, it uninstalls it. If it's not checked and you click on it, it reinstalls it. So if you can't find Internet Explorer, go double check in here and make sure that it's actually included. But thanks for that question. I think I am going to add that to the official documentation.
What is the equivalent of System Restore?
The equivalent of System Restore. So the equivalent of System Restore is in fact System Restore. So we have this create a restore point here. We'll go to that spot. So you can see that it's in the exact same old school spot. It's, computer name, hardware, system protection, I guess, is the new tab, because I think it used to be under advanced and then startup and recovery. Maybe it was under advanced, and anyway, it's in system protection now. It's a tab here. You can see for this machine that I actually have it turned off, which is why it asked me if I wanted to make a restore point. By default in our image, I believe it's turned on. And so you would come in here, you can create your restore points. If I had it turned on, this button wouldn't be grayed out. You click System Restore, it's the exact same thing. You walk through, you choose a restore point, and it works exactly the same way. There is another option that I think we have enabled in our image. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to double check the Windows 10 image that we've got ready. But you have this thing in here called Reset This PC. So this, this option we're never going to have go back to an earlier build. Well, that's not entirely true. You guys might actually get the option if you upgrade from an earlier version. This one won't have it because I'm in a preview and some other stuff. But you can see up here it says if your PC is not running well, resetting it may help. This lets you choose a file or choose to keep your files or remove them, then reinstalls Windows. So we have what's called a recovery image as part of our image. So basically for example, when Dell ships you a computer, like in the private sector, right? They ship a computer to your home. They build this recovery image, and it's essentially a copy of the original image that they set up with your machine. So it comes with all the, the Dell factory installed garbage that you usually uninstall as soon as you get it. But that image is sitting there taking up, 10 or 50 or however many gigabytes on your hard drive. And so when you walk through this, what it actually does is it backs up all your files and your settings and things like that. Goes and grabs that old recovery image, the image they shipped you when you got the machine, restores back to that image, and then puts all your files back. And I don't know if I'll have to double check to see if our Windows 10 image has that. Because we have an image available that we can just re-image machines with, I think we might have opted not to put that in there, but I'll double check it. This one you probably won't use too often, but if we do have it available, it might be a faster way to re-image a machine and keep the user's data. So I'll look into that and let you guys know. Other questions?
What is the status of upgrading current Windows 7 laptops to Windows 10?
Okay. So we have a Windows 10 image. It's actually been on the NAS since the beginning of the school year, or really close to it. We updated that image in December with the 1607 image, which is the anniversary update for Windows 10. And that's what we've shipped to Dell. The next generation, I can tell you this now, the next generation of laptops, which comes out in a few weeks, we'll be making an announcement that says they're shipping with Windows 10. And it's not because we hate you and we're trying to make your life harder, it's because they won't run Windows 7, from what we understand. It's the reason that we started moving forward with the re-imaging using Image Assist this year. It was anticipation of this generation of laptops that can only boot with fully UEFI compliant OSs, which is not Windows 7. Now Windows 7 can boot with UEFI, it's just not fully compliant with it. So you can't, for example, you can't install a UEFI Windows 7 on a Microsoft Surface because it's already got that set up for it. And the new Dell laptops are going to be that same way. So Windows 10 is coming officially on all new ship machines next month. And what that means for you guys for upgrading existing laptops is that you can upgrade your laptops to Windows 10. Like I said, we have the image available. 50s and like Series 50 and Series 70, like the 5550, 5470. So the last two generations actually have Image Assist driver packages. So if you download those to your Image Assist utility, you put the Windows 10 image on there and you apply the image, it'll get all the drivers and everything's cool. Anything before the 50, which kind of sucks because the 40 is really not that old, but anything before the 50 does not have an Image Assist driver pack. But the 40 series and the 30 series laptops actually have Windows 10 drivers available on Dell's website. And I think the 20 series even has Windows 8 drivers, which you could install. The good news about Windows 10 is that it's pretty good at identifying your hardware anyway. I've got a bunch of 20 series laptops sitting out there that I use as loaner machines that John Protzman and I just re-imaged all of them to Windows 10. They run about as well as Windows 7 does. Windows 10 actually has a little bit lighter footprint than Windows 7. It's a little bit less memory intensive. So they run pretty well for old 20 series, as good as they're going to run, I guess. But yeah, so you can still install it on some of these older machines. I wouldn't go, when I first started testing Windows 10, I installed it on a couple of 6500s, and it ran, and it found most of the, I don't think it found like a fingerprint reader or something, but you can install it for pretty far back and use the default Windows drivers. If you just run Windows Update, it'll find the drivers that it's missing and actually install those for you. But start with the Dell approved drivers, obviously.
Okay. One more is that they have seen on some Windows 10 machines the inability to save to the desktop.
The inability to save to the desktop.
Unable to save on a desktop.
I have not personally seen that. If they're not able to save to the, is this students? I'm not sure who asked that, but are you seeing that with students, or are you seeing that with staff, or are you seeing it with both?
Yeah, it says that they have to be admin or they have to be an admin.
Okay. What I would guess, and shoot me an email directly to look into it. If I had to guess, I would say there's a weird group policy set up for your container in AD that's probably blocking that. I've never actually seen that issue.
And their staff.
And their staff. That's interesting too. I would bet there's some kind of weird group policy that's set up for that. It's an odd one. Definitely shoot me an email so I can look into that for your school's container, and I'll see if I can spot if there's a problem there in your group policy.
Okay. And this is a question that I'm not sure what it relates to. It's from Megan. It says, I assume it won't impact the Office already installed.
No, so Windows 10 does require Office 2016. 2013 is not compatible on Windows 10. So you will have to have 2016 installed. Not a big deal. A good portion of you guys have 2016 anyway. And if you're setting up a new computer with Windows 10, it'll have Office anyway. If that's what you meant, like Microsoft Office, that's the answer to that. If you meant like Office Staff, the only impacted application is their Blue Bear Schoolbooks application. But as of a few weeks ago, that let's see, yeah, I think it was over Christmas break, they actually updated the servers to the newest version of Blue Bear, and we're still waiting to test that in Windows 10. But we have information from the manufacturer that's Windows 10 compatible. So that would be the only, if that's what you were asking about Windows Staff, or I'm sorry, Office Staff, then that would be the only thing to look at. But I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay. No, one person asked, did I miss the timeline to get this done? I guess, is there a timeline to upgrade to?
So you probably felt the heat of the Windows XP forced upgrade for all of the old machines. And that might be where that question is coming from. The good news about Windows 7 is that because of our long-term service contract with Microsoft, they will continue to release security updates for both IE 11 and Windows 7 until 2020. So we've got some time for that piece, and that's actually just, I take that back, I think that's just public sector. I think our LTS contract with them goes even further than that. Obviously, as you get new machines, they're all going to start coming with Windows 10. Once that starts happening, we're going to start encouraging people to start upgrading to Windows 10 whenever you re-image a machine. If you've got a 40, 50, 70 series laptop right now and you re-image it, go ahead and throw Windows 10 on there. You should probably start getting people used to it. The good news about Windows 10 though is that unlike 8, it's not so significantly different from Windows 7 that you're going to have a lot of culture shock around it. And to be perfectly honest, with how hard Microsoft nagged people like home users to upgrade to Windows 10 outside of the district, there are a lot of, you'd be surprised, there's probably a lot of your users in your schools already that have been using Windows 10 for 2 years. So it's I think that this is going to be an easier to swallow upgrade than some of our past ones have. It's one of the biggest reasons we never really pushed for Windows 8 to get upgraded. So as far as forced upgrades though, we're not going to force you to start upgrading, but we will encourage you that when you're re-imaging, might as well do Windows 10 if you can. And then there will probably be a push maybe in a year or two from now to where we start eyeing, okay, well, we should be able to start rolling out Windows 10 to more devices. We're currently investigating on the device management team, which is a new team, by the way. It consists of me, Tony Dorado, and Zane Umberger, and we're overseeing all of the LANDesk, the AirWatch, and Google administration stuff. So we're just trying to do just general device management stuff. But one of the things we're exploring on this new team is better provisioning for laptops and desktops in the district. Right now we have Deploy Studio for the Mac machines. You connect to the network, you pull down your image, and it images the machine, and everything's great. We have a few options to leverage LANDesk or the Microsoft development or deployment toolkit, and we're exploring those options right now because we would be able to push an image down, and then you could kind of customize the applications that you would want on it, and it would install all of those with your image. So no two images would have to be identical. that's the intention behind it anyway. And if we get that off the ground, that'll be a really great way to upgrade existing users from 7 to 10. You run through that setup process. It'll transfer all of their files over. It'll transfer all their applications over, and then in an hour or two, when it's done upgrading and transferring everything, they're sitting there with their computer like they had it before and Windows 10. We're going to try to start piloting that this summer.
Okay, one question is, I understand that there's a new reimage process. David Biddle mentioned that I need to book time with him to learn how to do it.
He is correct, and you do. If you're still using the old image process, that means you're still using the old images, and each of those machines is going to be, I think we last made those images before Christmas break of 2015. So you're at least a year behind on updates, and that's going to be not much fun for your end users when they receive an hour of updates after you've updated their machine. So yes, you do need to book time with David Biddle or someone else on the site support team. The new process is called Image Assist. It's a utility provided by Dell. It's actually how we capture our images to provide to Dell when we ship them new images to ship on our machines. And so they have a utility that we can install onto a USB drive, and it actually works very much like our old utility. Other SDRs that are out there that are nodding their heads are probably like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same idea. It's just provided by Dell. It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, talk to David Biddle, talk to me, talk to anybody else on one of these teams that you normally work with, and we'll be in pretty good shape.
So I just ran out of battery.
You ran out of battery?
Yeah.
Okay. Sam's battery is dead.
Also, guys, the attendance link is on the video description. So if you just click on the link, please take attendance. And there's also a survey about the course. If you could take it. I'm going to try to get connected, but I can't take any questions.
Could I open a browser
Yeah.
over here and pop into it? Let's take that onto this screen. What's the link I'm going to?
Go to YouTube.
Oh, right.
And
It's
you'll
under
just
your...
you'll just have to sign in with your DPS.
Nope. DPS. Yeah, that's right.
Just look for me, Samuel Garza. Yeah.
That's you. Oh,
Just
should I
click
go
on
back
live.
to... Okay, live now. There we go.
And there's a chat, so if you could see any questions.
Mute that just in case. Let's see. Image Assist is great. Blair made a USB. I see the attendance link, which is the survey link as well, right? Yes. Okay.
28.
What's that?
The re-image STR PD.
Oh, thank you. So there's a STR
Oh
session
yeah,
on the
that's right.
28th.
Good. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, so we did a training on this a few months ago. I think it was our first live broadcast like this, and we are redoing that training on the 28th. That's right, the 28th is what you said. We're redoing that training again, and it goes through the entire Image Assist process. If I remember right, in fact that training actually goes through Image Assist, how to apply and capture images, and it also goes through Deploy Studio and FileWave Lightning for the Mac side of it. So it's just kind of an overall, this is the status of imaging in the district. I think we briefly touched on iPads and Chromebooks, but that's a whole other training by itself. I don't think we go into detail there. It's mainly for just imaging laptops and desktops. So I'm glancing over here. We got a thanks Nigel and Sam. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for attending. Thank you for all of you attending. Doesn't look like there are any other questions right now, but if you have any, just reach out to me directly. I'm here all day, every day, for the rest of my life probably. So just shoot me an email or give me a call or whatever. I'll try to answer whatever I can. Thank you again for everyone attending. Thank you to Sam for helping make all of this work. And you guys have a great rest of your day.
Cool. Just stop recording or stop streaming.